The Majority Whip.
Mr. President, at the outset, let me thank my colleague from Alaska for his service to the United States, excuse me, for his service to the United States of America in the Marine Corps. And let me thank all the women and men who've served in the Marine Corps and all other branches of our military service. We owe them a great debt of gratitude, and we certainly owe them justice. What is at issue here is the discovery that the water that they were drinking while they were training at Camp LeJeune was poisoned, and it was endangering the health of the Marines and their families. For years, they sought compensation and protection and failed, and just this last year, we passed the PACT Act, and under that provision of law, finally gave a cause of action to these Marines and their families to recover for the damages they'd suffered because of this poisonous water at this U.S. government facility training camp at Camp LeJeune. Now, I voted for that proudly, and it was a strong bipartisan roll call, as it should have been. But let me make sure you understand, and everyone understands, what these Marines who believe that they have been damaged by this poisoned water, this contaminated water, have to go through now to recover even the first dollar. The first instance is they don't receive it automatically. The senator from Alaska continues to refer to the Biden administration standards of 2% and 10% and so forth. He's quoting from a hypothetical that dealt with a compensation fund, not what we passed here in the United States Senate. Compensation funds like the 9/11 victims. We understand those cases. It wasn't a question of the victims going in and proving that 9/11 actually occurred or that their loved one was killed. It was almost an automatic thing that you qualify for. So the low contingency fees, which he quoted, was for a hypothetical approach, which is not the law. What is the law today? What if my father or someone in my family, my son, had gone through camp training at Camp LeJeune in the period of time that's affected by this? How do they recover? There are two avenues to recovery. One of them is file a claim with the United States Navy, and the Navy can decide that the claim is meritorious and pay it. But if the Navy does not pay it, the administrative hearing does not result in a payment to the plaintiff, to the claimant, to the Marine, the next step is a serious one. It goes to the federal court, not just any federal court, but one we designated, the Eastern District of North Carolina. And what happens at that court? That Marine now is walking into a federal courtroom and has to establish a case and prove the liability of the government for his losses. What does he have to prove? Well, he has to prove causation, liability, and damages. Have you ever been in a federal courtroom? Want to walk in there by yourself and see what happens? I'm telling you, it's a humbling experience even for a trained lawyer. I've been through it. And I'll tell you this, I wouldn't want to go through it with something as serious as recovering damages for health care costs or injuries to someone dear to me and my family without adequate legal representation. What does it cost to get this representation? Well, there's no requirement that the Marine hire a lawyer at all. But if they do, the ordinary course of business says that they're going to pay a contingency fee, which means you don't pay the lawyer up front. The lawyer basically represents you, and if they recover, then you recover. But if they don't recover anything for your claim, they're empty-handed as you are empty-handed. That's the nature of a contingency fee. So the senator from Alaska came to the floor about 2 weeks ago, raising this issue, and I said, let's work on this together. And I want to say our staffs have worked on it together, and I'm sorry that we haven't reached an agreement. But here was the proposal that I put on the table and the reason for it. First, on the contingency fee. If you're just going to go to the Navy and file your administrative claim, we put a cap on the contingency fee that the lawyers paid of 20%. 20%. Where did we get that? From the Federal Tort Claims Act. That's the percentage that's used now under the law. And then we said if you have to go to a trial in a federal court, the maximum attorney's fee is 1/3 if you recover. If you don't recover, you don't pay. It's a contingency fee. Now, the senator from Alaska has said, well, let's do 2% and 10% instead of 20% and 33%. So what can you buy for 2% contingency fee or a 10% contingency fee? Well, you can probably buy a lawyer who's never tried a case in court. You could buy an attorney whose office is in the trunk of his car. You can buy an attorney who will put the veterans file at the bottom of the stack because there's so little money involved in it. Or you can buy an attorney who will say, my paralegal in Singapore will get back to you later. That's what you get if you try to get by with 2% and 10% when the ordinary course of business is 33 1/3%. You're doing the veterans no favor by saying that they can't pay any more than 2% contingency fee if they can't find a good lawyer. And I'm sorry to say you won't find a lot of good lawyers at a 2% contingency fee. That's just the reality. So we went to the senator from Alaska and said, we will cap the contingency fees. 20% administrative case, no more than 33 1/3% contingency fee if the case goes to trial. Then we went further. He raised a point that I think is a valid point. How does the Marine know he's going to get paid? We think the lawyer will be paid, but will the Marine be paid if there's a verdict or a settlement? We put in language that said definitely the Marine has to be the first paid. We offered that to the senator from Alaska. We went further. There's a bill pending before the United States Senate, bipartisan bill. This bill, Senator Blumenthal of Connecticut and Senator Bozeman of Arkansas, a Republican, have come up with a bill that says those people who are ripping off veterans, unaccredited groups that are ripping off veterans by making them pay fees to collect the benefits they're owed by law, ought to be criminally liable. There's a criminal fine in that bill. So those are the three things we offered to the senator from Alaska. Not that he'd go away empty-handed, but he'd get a result and get that result in a timely way. We made that offer over the last 2 weeks. He did not accept it. I wish he had. I'm still going to work with him to reach that goal so that we can make sure that all the men and women who are affected by the Camp LeJeune contaminated water get compensated with competent attorneys who can represent them in court effectively and recover for them. We're doing them no favor if we limit the contingency fee and they can't hire a competent attorney. That's the maximum amount, 20 and 33, but it's certainly within the realm of ordinary practice. So I would say to the senator from Alaska, the offer I made 2 weeks ago, I make to you again now. Let's fix this problem. Let's not trade speeches on the floor of the Senate. We both feel intensely about our point of view, but we share one common value that I think we ought to make very clear here. We want these Marines to be compensated. That's why we passed the PACT Act. We want to do it in a way that they're not exploited. I abhor those attorneys, or even those who are not attorneys, who are trying to exploit these individuals. Let's work together to put an end to that once and for all. And let's do it in a timely way. By the time we get back here and consider legislation, it'll be almost February, another 6 weeks or longer, and time is wasting. I would just say to the Veterans Administration and all the veteran service organizations, warn all of those who would be plaintiffs in these lawsuits not to be taken in by anyone who is going to cheat them. Make sure that they are treated fairly, and we can do our part too. Let's pledge together to get that done in the new year. I yield the floor.
Senator from Alaska.
I want to thank my colleague from Illinois, and he has my full commitment to try to get this done before we leave. And I'm willing to compromise on some of these issues. But he makes a good point. With the Senate schedule, we're not going to be back here almost till the end of January. And by then, some of these payments are starting to be awarded. And we do not want, and I think the senator from Illinois agrees with me, situations where payments are going 50, 60% contingency fees. Nobody wants that. We shouldn't want that. That is just unfair, and this regulation at the VA is also ridiculously unfair, favoring trial lawyers over sick Marines. So the senator from Illinois has my commitment. I'll work day and night on this issue to try and get it done before we leave. Before we leave. Otherwise, you're going to have a lot of Marines, sick Marines and their families, who are going to get ripped off. And we know that's going to happen, and we shouldn't allow it. But I will work with the senator from Illinois. He's got a lot of power as the chairman of the Judiciary Committee on this important issue that I think we should all care about. So I appreciate his comments, and I will redouble my efforts on this topic. Thank you. I yield the floor.
Mr. President, I ask recognition.
Senator from Illinois.
I want to close by thanking the senator from Alaska. Republican, Democrat, but committed to the same values. Make sure that these Marines and their families are treated fairly. currently have 14,000 pending claims. These Marines have 2 years from when we passed the law back in, I believe, June or July, to file their claims. There's going to be a mountain of claims involved here, and we've got to make sure that we do it in a thoughtful way, in a timely way,